Hello, everybody. Again, I feel like it hasn't been too long since we just saw each other. And welcome and make yourself comfy in the virtual seats wherever you are in the world. Let us know. This is a global event, and we are so happy that we can accommodate all the time zones and all the speakers and have just a wonderful time with everybody for many, many hours of live content. I'm your host for today, but I'm not the important person in this room right now. We have Laura Bernard, who she will tell you a bit about herself, but many of you, I'm sure, know about her. And I think, from my point of view, whenever I think of Laura, I'm thinking about impact, and and I've
Good.
got you. I think those are the key things that I can think of. And Laura is going to talk to us today about the PMO's role in accelerating strategy delivery. It's a very cool topic, and I will pass it over to her in a sec. For housekeeping, we have a chat, use it, explore it, tell us how you feel, share your LinkedIn profiles and anything else. Put your questions, drop them in the chat. Nobody's going to leave here today unanswered. We might, or we may or may not have time to do this during the presentation, but we'll make sure to answer your questions in a timely manner. And yeah, other than that, the session is recorded. So if you can't see it live, you will have access to it. And I guess that's it. Let's have fun and listen to Laura. Laura, over to you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm so excited. I'm actually not the important one here. All of you are. And being here with you means the world to me because the world is changing, and your role in that accelerated environment we are in is going to require you to accelerate strategy delivery. And that's what this is all about today. So, let's see, I've got the chat here. So let's keep the conversation going in the chat. And I'm really grateful to be spending this time with you, but I am going to go quickly. So make sure that you turn off all of your pings and dings and rings so that we can make the most of this time together. And if I don't get your question answered here, don't worry. I will let you know how to go further with us and access cool bonuses, resources, bunch of freebies at the end. And with that, you'll get an email from me so that you can send me back any questions you've got. All right. So, and I do see some of our fantastic students in here. And oh, hello to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to dive in. Are you all ready? So say yes in the chat if you are ready, because I want to make sure you know how to find the chat. And then we're going to get ready to go. Yes. All right. Awesome. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay. All right. Let's do this, everyone. So if you don't know me, my name is Laura Bernard. I have a few certifications, but most recently I became an author. I wrote a book called The Impact Engine, which is all about accelerating strategy delivery for PMO and transformation leaders. In 2021, I was named the World PMO Influencer of the Year. And that's because I've been doing this for a very, very long time. In fact, I'm at about 30 years now of driving strategic change through PMOs and transformation teams. And 15 years of that was in your shoes as a PMO and business transformation leader inside organizations. And what happened was I learned a lot of things, mostly the hard way. And I'm going to share some of those lessons learned with you here today. And I finally just kept saying, oh, no, don't do this instead. No. Wait, that's why it's not working. You do this thing I had to learn the hard way that I don't want you to learn the hard way. And I started putting that all down in a book, in a course, in this podcast called the PMO Strategies Podcast. And we have other events and all kinds of cool things that we've been doing to support elevating the role of the PMO in organizations globally. So that's what we're going to dive into today. If you are interested in learning more about the book itself, it is in print hardcover format, digital ebook format, and hopefully starting next week in audiobook format. So if you, no matter how you what learning modality you have, you'll be able to listen to it, read it, hold it in your hands. Like love holding mine in my hands, and I have like a gazillion little bookmarks in all the places that I want to like teach something or do something or add this to our coaching mastermind or whatever. So it's literally about the lessons that I've learned and that we have been applying with our clients and students all over the world. And I want to share some of that with you today, some of those hard-won lessons, so that it is easier for you to get to the high impact results without all the mistakes and wrong turns that a lot of PMO people make when they are early on this journey, whether they've, or they've built a PMO multiple times. If you just can't figure out why you can't get over the hump, be seen as a strategic business partner and value driver in your organization, I've got some secrets to share with you today that I think will help you. So let's do this. You ready? All right. Looks like everyone's ready. All right. So step one, this is about accelerating strategy delivery. So where do you actually start? And the problem is a lot of PMO people are like, okay, well, I already know what I'm doing. This is all about project management. And therefore, I know how to do my space. But what I'm asking you to do is, and I'm going to show you how, we need to come up and out of not just where we've been living in our world of strategy execution to solve a bigger problem. Where is that problem happening? Well, where does the strategy start? Okay, that's where we need to be thinking about. If we're going to talk about strategy, we need to start with where the strategy is being defined. It might be in the boardroom, on a retreat somewhere, over Zoom calls, or in the mind of your chief strategy officer or your CEO. And that idea is formed and then turned into a way that the organization is going to achieve its business goals. Now, whether you are in this room or not, when those conversations are happening, they are happening. And I know some of you are like, what strategy? I don't even know what's going on with the strategy. Yeah. But even if that's only in your CEO's head, someone is thinking about how do we take this vision and turn it into a reality? How do we serve our customer, which could be members, which could be the community, it could be tax-paying citizens, or it could just be anyone in the marketplace that you're responsible for serving. There is a way that you do that as a company, and that way needs to evolve over time, and it's happening in the conversations where the strategy is being defined. But for so many reasons, that strategy doesn't actually end up getting delivered. So we're going to look at what your executives and your organization are experiencing and why they might not be able to achieve their business goals. Okay, so take your PMO leader hat off for a second, put on the C-suite hat for a minute, and I want you to imagine the world they're living in with the challenges that they're seeing in delivering the strategy. Okay, so think about this for a minute. First and foremost, these are some of the most common pain points that your executives are experiencing in this process. 74% of executives, 74%, say that they don't have faith that this transformational strategy that they've developed can actually get delivered in their organization, that it will actually succeed. They've got great ideas, but they don't have faith that their organization can execute on those ideas. 74%. Just let that sit for a minute. Okay. So then 8% will say that their companies are actually good at strategy and at execution. 8%. All right. So if only 8% of leaders rate their companies effective at both strategy and execution, how are they actually going to get anything done? They're like, yeah, wait, we got a great strategy, but nobody knows how to deliver. That's usually what they're saying, by the way. And why is that? Well, most of the company doesn't actually know what the strategy is. Okay. So if most of the company doesn't know what the strategy is, how are they possibly going to be able to execute on it? And 61% of organizations, this is usually the leaders that are talked to in this survey, fail to bridge the gap between strategy formulation in that boardroom, in that CEO's head, and the implementation. Okay. But here's the problem with all of that. What they're talking about, I want you to think about it this way. The statistics they're talking about is you want to have this visual in mind. Every organization has a vision and a goals, and the path to reaching those goals is what we call the strategy. Think of this as the chess queen, the most powerful piece on the chessboard, deciding the direction and priorities for your organization. All right. And this is where most of you live. For an organization to get things done, You want to picture this delivery engine. You've got to have a strong delivery team that is responsible for executing on that strategy. It's the gear that powers an organization's ability to execute. This is the gap they're talking about. But the reason that nobody can close this gap is that there's a different problem going on that nobody's talking about. Okay? So make sure you've got your notepad here and you're writing this stuff down. Because again, I'm going to go fast, but there's a reason for this. I need you to see this picture and understand what we've got to do differently. Now, here's the typical complaints you hear when there's a gap between strategy and execution. And I want you to put in the chat as soon as I come up with the one that your executives are complaining about. So I'm looking in the chat. Just say yes as soon as we hit the one that either your project managers are complaining about, you're complaining about, your executives are complaining about. I want you to put the yes in the chat as soon as you see yours. I'm pretty sure many of you are going to see it here somewhere. So you hear complaints like, I don't even know what's happening in the organization. Most C-suite executives, that's what they say to me. They say, and CEOs, everyone wants me to make decisions, but I don't have the information to do so. I don't even know what's going on. Accountability and ownership are unclear. Who actually owns this part of the process, and why can't we get things done? Projects don't achieve their business benefits. I want to see the yeses. Oh yeah, accountability. Yep. Put it in the chat if I hit yours. Projects aren't achieving their business benefits. Resources. This is where usually yes. Resources spread so thin that we can't get our work done, right? Projects take too long and they cost too much. Decisions take too long, which delays projects. Projects results are unpredictable. So many changes, work can't be planned. You tell me to put a plan together, but then you're constantly changing priorities. How are we supposed to get anything done? Every department has different priorities. This is a pretty common one, and one I've been writing some articles for, like CEO Magazine, CIO.com, and others, to tell the executives, hey, everyone, the reason you can't get anything done is that you don't even have people aligned. And here's my favorite. Every project is a number one priority. Definitely put a yes in the, all right, everyone should be putting a yes in the chat right now, because now I know I've hit them, right? This is like so what everybody's experienced. But here's the problem. I hear these things all the time, and I heard them when I was in your shoes, and I couldn't figure out, well, if these are the complaints, and I would try to fix them, but I couldn't seem to get over the hump and get them fixed. So I started reading books and taking classes, and all the advice I was getting, if these are the typical complaints, and I was applying that typical advice, and I wasn't seeing anything improve, then there's got to be something wrong with the information I was getting. And here's one of the first things that I learned. What I learned was that the typical advice was part of the problem. I needed better results than what was possible by following the typical advice. I needed a new system, a completely different approach to do what the business leaders actually wanted, which was to accelerate strategy delivery, get a much higher return on investment much faster, go faster, get better results, and stop giving me all this like excuses as to why we can't get our strategy delivered. So I had to learn to ask better questions, and learned over my years of trying harder and harder to follow the theory. I had shifted to giving people what I thought they needed instead of what they wanted. So I had to do the only thing I knew to do, which was to actually go back and shift my whole thinking about the work I was doing, why I was doing it, how I was doing it to get different results. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about, is what I wish I had when I was in your shoes to fast track getting to the outcomes that I was looking for. And I didn't, but you do. You get the benefit of my experience and my mistakes that I'm going to walk you through, and what came out of that as a result, because my goal is to make it easier for you, and frankly, your career depends on it. Because today I can tell you we're moving much faster than we were back then. And I was building my first PMO in 1999 in the middle of the dot-com insanity, where all of these brick and mortar stores were trying to get online and get online fast. And the problem is that they couldn't, because they didn't understand the path to get there. So we had to like make it up as we were going along. The technology was barely keeping up with the changes in the demands of our business leaders. And at the same time, I was having to figure out how to do this PMO thing for the very first time, and I had no idea what I was doing. So if any of you are feeling like stuck, frustrated, overwhelmed, like which of this advice is the good advice? I think the reason that so many of you are having this challenge is because you're trying to Google your way to a PMO, right? You get all this great advice and all of these different pieces, parts, and all over the place. That's what I started doing. And what's missing is a framework, a process, something that's based on actual real world experience that can tell you, okay, this is what you should do, in what order, why it matters, how to do it. So I'm going to take you on the journey of what I learned and put into what we call the impact engine system, which is in that book, the impact engine that I showed you at the beginning. This is what I walk through in this book. So if you want more, you can get it for in the book. So I discovered what I now call the impact engine system, which is a 6-step framework that revolutionizes the way that organizations deliver on strategy to achieve the business results the business leaders are expecting. And it's all based on the mistakes that I made that I had to learn the hard way that I want to prevent you from making. But I want you to understand that it is an iterative approach to continuous value delivery. Did I sneak in some agile there? Maybe. But what I want you thinking about is not big A agile, but agility and being able to be nimble and flexible and shift your focus from perfecting process to driving better business outcomes. Okay, that's the very first thing you need to learn. And I'm going to show you how to do this. To understand this, I want you to be thinking about the strategy life cycle, going back to the executives and the experience they have. They define the strategy, and for us, that turns into idea generation and projects getting approved. And that's where the strategy lives, okay? Then we come in when they throw it over the fence to us, and we get into strategy execution. And that's where we're doing all our planning and delivery of projects. That's the delivery space that you all are living in, right? But then there's this other thing called strategy realization, where we actually not just realize the benefits, but the value for those benefits. And that's one of the gaps that's missing. Right here, this perceived gap is between where they're throwing it from one side of the fence over to the other, and where do things start to fall apart? When it's visual, when we're tracking things like on time, on scope, on budget. That's where the gap is actually living, which is far different than what a lot of people are expecting. And nobody's really paying attention to whether or not that strategy was realized in a way that made it worth doing in the first place. Okay? That's a challenge that we're dealing with right now. The gap is perceived to be over here, but there's actually a lot more going on. And that's what I'm going to walk you through. So this is where most of you all spend your time. When the strategy is defined, it's usually tossed over the fence, and we've got everyone building templates and tools and process, and PMO's like, I got this. We're going to get everyone certified, and we're going to do all these great things. And guess what happens? Nothing the executives actually wanted. Right? So what the executives start complaining, because no matter how many templates and tools and process and training and all these things you're doing and all this money you're spending, and nothing's actually getting better. And I'll tell you why. They get frustrated and they get angry and they're like, you need to do more. And so what do? More templates, more tools. Oh, wait, here's some more. And no results are actually being achieved the way they need to be. We have our strategy defined. We have, and thrown over to us. We're throwing a bunch of templates, tools, and process at it. And nobody's actually making sure that the value for that strategy is being realized in a way that makes it worth doing in the first place. No amount of templates, tools, and process are going to fix it. And I'm going to tell you why. Because you all just said yes, 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 yes in the chat. Everything's still a number one priority, no matter how much PMO work we do. A strategy is still unclear. Resources are still over allocated. Managers keep redirecting staff, all before your projects ever start. And it's setting all of your projects up to fail. No amount of fixing strategy execution is going to solve the problem if the problem isn't in strategy execution. And guess what happens as a result? Projects don't meet goals. They cost more than the benefits to do them. Nobody's actually measuring value anyway. And the project managers are off to the next thing. You're so busy scrambling, trying to cover for the fact that these projects aren't actually achieving their goals, and everyone's frustrated, and you're putting more reports together and more templates and more process. And if we just could get everyone to do this consistently, maybe we could get better results. But we keep making the same mistakes over and over again. And here's why. because it's not your fault. And it's not a problem in project and strategy execution. The problems are happening before you ever get involved. And that was one of the biggest mistakes and aha moments I had to figure out. You can't be a perfectionist of process. You must be a driver of business value. Okay. I found that when the people saw the PMO coming, they would run in the other direction. And I was like, well, why? We're here to help. These are the problems we're supposed to be helping you solve. But the problem is they didn't want to work with us and they found every excuse to not follow the PMO's process because they didn't see any connection with what we were doing to the value that they needed to drive. And that's where I learned that we couldn't be these perfectionists of process. And that's where stage one of the impact engine system came from. This was the first step. It's about positioning yourself for success by developing a whole different way to think about the work you do and the value you drive. So how do we do that? First, let's look at strategy definition. This is where the strategy is happening, right? Then they throw it over the fence to you. Nobody's paying attention here. This is the problem. We're talking about this strategy to execution gap, but instead of thinking about strategy and execution as two separate and distinct entities, we need to start thinking them as two parts of a greater whole that must be working together in unison throughout the entire process if we want to realize business goals for that strategy. So we want strategy and execution together, strategy and that delivery engine in the strategy definition stage, in strategy execution, and in strategy realization. If you want to close the gap, you need to understand, first of all, there's a lot more than one gap. Two, you need to understand that execution people need to be involved in the strategy process, and strategy teams need to remain accountable during execution. And everyone needs to be focused on getting to that strategy realization over here at the far end together and not jumping off to the next something shiny, when everyone needs to be making sure that the work we're doing stays aligned with the strategic objectives for the organization. Your sponsors are connected and engaged with the work, and everyone has a line of sight from the beginning to the end of the process. But once I figured this out and started understanding, oh, my role should be much bigger, then I had another problem. Great. Now what? How do I actually make sure that we're putting the right services in place that solve these problems? And that's when I realized that mistake number 2 was understanding what I thought they needed as opposed to what they actually needed. So my second lesson learned was that I had to give them what they wanted before I could give them what they needed. You see, my focus was on giving them the medicine I thought they needed to take. And so they still kept running in the other direction because I know how to fix your strategy problems. I know how to fix your strategy realization problems. They still didn't want to talk to me because there was still a disconnect. Even though I got it, they didn't, because I was still trying to give them the medicine they wanted instead of what they needed. So how do you solve for that? This is where step 2 came in. Step 2 was all about asking better questions and building stronger relationships with my stakeholders to help them unlock the highest priorities, giving them what they wanted so that they would come on the journey with us. So that's where stage 2 came in. And let me show you what that looks like. If you're fighting any resistance with your stakeholders, here's what might be going on. First and foremost, you're always asking questions here. How do we make projects go faster? Get on time, on scope, on budget, all of that, right? But what if I told you that it's not actually about you doing projects better, and it's much more about making sure that you've actually solved the problems before they ever start? If you want to accelerate strategy delivery, step up and out of just execution and support the entire strategy lifecycle, you got to be asking better questions at the front of the process. What is setting these projects up for failure? By the way, it's not because you don't have enough resources. It's because over here in the beginning of the process, people are not prioritizing. You have, you're trying to shove 10 pounds of projects in a 5-pound bag. You have the resources you have, but if you spread them so thinly across all the projects that everyone has 1/16 of a critical resource on their projects, no wonder they can't get anything done. Right? All they're doing is task switching all day long instead of actually being focused on solving the right problems. So that's where I learned it's not actually about getting better and, yeah, sure, we need templates and process. I got it. But Not yet. Just like we'll talk about all that in a minute. First, let's go make sure that we have better priorities, that we are clear on what the strategy even is. Remember, 95% of the typical workforce doesn't understand their company's strategy. Let's go figure out what the strategy is. Let's go figure out what problems we're trying to solve. And then we can come over to making sure that they're delivered better. And oh, by the way, we actually better make sure that we understand upfront what success looks like for those projects. So when we get to strategy realization, we're able to say, yes, we did what we said we were going to do because we're measuring it, because we've asked questions in the front of the process to say, what does success look like? Right? Like there are simple things we can do, like put a business case together, but you don't put a 45-page business case together. You put a business case together that answers 3 questions. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? And what does success look like? Just doing that can improve the entire strategy life cycle. But so let's say that you're doing that. Let's say that you're asking all the right questions. You're asking questions across the entire strategy life cycle, and you're saying, okay, all right, stakeholders in the strategy process, what are your pain points? What are your challenges? What are the problems you're trying to solve? Well, what happens is a lot of times we start putting those bandages on symptoms instead of the root causes. Okay. We start putting bandages on symptoms and fixing what we think needs to be fixed. But instead, we need to be looking at getting to the root causes of the problems that are happening. It's not just about projects are taking too long and costing too much. What's really going on is starting at the front of the strategy life cycle. But if you fix that root cause, like let's say staggering the work throughout the year and only doing work when you have the time to do it, what happens? You actually create this positive ripple effect across the entire strategy life cycle and solve the problems that the stakeholders actually have because you make them prioritize. And then we don't have a problem of projects taking too long and costing too much because we only start work when we have the people to do it. Imagine if you fixed that one thing. Imagine the results that you could achieve. Okay. So, first step was me learning we had to start with understanding what the underlying business problems were that the organization was trying to solve. And the second step was asking better questions, building better relationships. And then the third step was actually making sure we got to the root cause of the problems that the organization was having. If you get to that root cause, you can then fix one thing, solve a problem, and build credibility and momentum and lay out a roadmap for years to come that continues to solve the next problem and the next problem and the next problem. But if you spend all of your time addressing symptoms instead of root causes, you are never going to solve the right problems. And you're going to keep pushing this uphill battle when instead what we need to be doing is saying, how do we actually create that positive ripple effect across the whole organization, one step at a time? Okay. So to do that, we got to keep going through these cycles again and again and again. And when we do, we're able to position the entire organization for better engagement in the process. All right. So I want to pause right there and I want you to just think about what I'm telling you. I'm telling you that you've got to shift the way you think about your role in this process, what you must do differently, and the opportunity you have in front of you if you simply go one step at a time with asking the right questions and setting yourself up to be what we call the strategy navigator for the organization. Let me see if I can get you to that. Yes, get you that process. Why is it not letting me reshare this with you? Hold on. Well, my slide got stuck. Let me hang tight. Okay, so I want you walking away from this thinking about how do we get you from here, from in this middle spot in the world to supporting the entire strategy life cycle. And I want you starting to look at where are your opportunities to show value quickly and keep your organization moving in the right direction. Okay, that means that you're going to have to become what we call the strategy navigator for the organization, where you are looking at your role in a completely new lens. But here's what I want to leave you with as we wrap up here. One thing I want you thinking about. You must have a framework. You cannot Google your way to set up a PMO. You can't Google your way to, pieces and parts that you're putting together from all over the internet that are saying, this is the thing to do here. Oh, but this is the thing to do here. I want you thinking about, what do I need to do step by step by step to go on this journey of elevating my role from here, where I am in the middle of templates, tools, and process world. We'll still do them, but we got to wait until we've brought our stakeholders with us along the journey, thinking different about the role that we have for them, the work we need to do with them, and the results we need to help them achieve. Okay, that's what I want you to think about here. So if you're interested in learning more about our framework for doing that and all the mistakes that I made and the lessons that I learned, you can go to impactenginebook.com, or you can just check out the book, and I'm going to send you a whole bunch of templates and resources that walk you through this exact process step by step, so that you can do this on your own with a framework that works every time.
And I am back. Thank you, Laura. This was a really good presentation, and as you mentioned at the beginning, the chat was on fire. So thank you for keeping all of us engaged and for the insights. And for those of you in the chat, I know there were a couple of questions, not many right away. If you would like to connect with Laura in the conference chat, then you can grab your answers quicker, or if not, we can just pass on the question. So feel free to keep connecting and networking.
Yeah, they can just scan that right there if they want to go to LinkedIn and connect with me there. But make sure that you do go to LinkedIn, connect with me there. But also, we have all kinds of free resources on our website, impactenginebook.com. You can go grab a bunch of free resources. If you upload the book receipt, you get all kinds of goodies. So thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time. I hope I've helped you think a little bit differently about your role and what you must do to accelerate strategy delivery. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you to the audience. I believe we have a few minutes break while another session might be ongoing, and then hopping in for more, because we are not done by no means. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.